Hey, Dan from Jump Bag here, and we're going to continue on in our acronym series talking about level of consciousness, or our LOC. And now we're going to hit the big dog. The one that most people are intimidated by when they first get to this is our GCS, or our Glasgow Coma Scale, so GCS. In our GCS, you can have a score of 3 all the way to 15. The lower the score, the more unconscious and the lower responsive you are. So 3 to 15. No less than 3, no more than 15. Now, the easiest way to remember that for me is I just say EVM 456. Go ahead and say it. EVM 456. It sounds like BVM, and so it just kind of works for me. So EVM 456. What this tells us is that eyes, or E, has 4 possible points. V, verbal, has 5 possible points, and M, for motor, has 6 possible points. So now you know how many points you can get from each category just by remembering EVM 456. So now let's break down each individual portion so you can see just how you get those points. All right, let's start with eyes in our EVM. Eyes, 4 possible points. The more points you get, the higher on the level of consciousness scale you are. And so it starts with 4 points for spontaneous eyes. You walk in the room and they're looking at you. They pick up on you right away. V, verbal, you got to say something. Hey, Bill, and then they stop and look at you. Painful, maybe a little sternum rub, maybe a trap squeeze, and then you start to get some stimulation. They start to look at you. Or unresponsive, they just don't look at you. For me, the easiest way to remember this is pretty much just AVPU, right? Alert, verbal, painful, and unresponsive. AVPU is, if I can do AVPU, I've already got the first section of the Glasgow Coma Scale done. Now all I got to worry about and learn is verbal and motor. All right, next up, verbal, EVM, verbal. So we're talking 5 points for verbal. Oriented, they know where they are, the time, person, place, they're completely coherent. That's going to get them 5 points. Confused, they seem a little off. Maybe they can't answer some questions. They're not exactly sure where they are, but they're talking, but they're definitely confused, maybe a little slow. Inappropriate words, they're communicating with you now, but they're naming things wrong. They're way more off. They're getting more difficult to understand because the things aren't making sense. Next, we're going to go to sounds. They're just inappropriate sounds. They're not saying words, maybe just moaning, groaning, where they're responding to you, but it's non-coherent. And then last, no response. No response is just 1 point. Remember, they always get at least 1 point. The higher up, the better. And finally, we get to our motor function. 6 points in our EVM 456. 6 points is obeying commands. You talk to them, they're able to follow the commands, they can squeeze your hand, they can move. All that's gravy, right? So that's going to be 6 points. 5 is when they localize pain. And we've seen this before. Maybe somebody's sleeping and a bug lands on them or whatever, and they kind of push it away. They know enough of what's going on to push something away, but they're not necessarily conscious. Next, we withdraws from pain. And this is when, like, there's a sternum rub or something and they move away. They don't like what's going on, but they're not pinpointing exactly where it's at. They're just pulling away. Next, we come to decorticate, decerebrate, and then no response. Now, decorticate, I think of core. This is when you have a flexion. The body goes like this and it kind of tightens up. It's almost like it's defending itself still a little bit. It's kind of balling up and holding things off. It's a decorticate posture towards the core. Decerebrate is just the opposite, when everything kind of extends out and away. And when I see these, I think of the UFC fights, right? Sometimes somebody gets knocked out and they're still defending themselves. Well, that's a little better than when they're just completely tight and laid out. And what's even worse than completely laid out, the 2 points of decerebrate, is when it's just a limp noodle. There is no motor function at all. So this is your 6 points for motor function with your GCS. Obeying commands, localizing pain, withdrawing from pain, decorticate posturing to the core, decerebrate, moving away, and then none, unresponsive. You add up the number of points from eyes, verbal, and motor, and that's going to give you your score. The higher, the better. And so this is your Glasgow Coma Scale. And remember, EVM 456.